Lim Li Bang, from segregated to honored citizen. In 1898, Lim Li Bang made the North Ward School's honor roll and won the class prize for proficiency, presaging his future success in his local Chinese community as well as in the broader Victoria society. He would eventually build a portfolio of various businesses, including a general Asian merchandise store started by his father, several greenhouses, brickworks, and a sausage and egg selling business. He became the first Chinese bank manager in British Columbia. He constructed landmark buildings that still stand today. His cultural interests led him to invest in a Chinese opera company. But his social conscience led him to play a significant role in fighting for equality for his compatriots in British Columbia, while also helping China become a republic. Throughout his early life, Lim Bang would experience racism in his hometown, but eventually he would find not only acceptance, but also receive accolades for his achievements, including keys to the city. Lim Bang was born in Victoria on May 17, 1884, and his parents were from China, but the family would become one of the largest land developers in Chinatown. The Lim family's mercantile store, called Kim Bo Yuan, was listed as early as 1889. His father, Lim Dat, recognized the value of a Canadian education for his sons. They could learn to be fluent in the English language as well as in the Western culture, both prerequisites for business success in his chosen country. He might have also wished for them to be better integrated and to be more accepted by the dominant white culture. But in 1898, Lim Bang and his brother, Lim Li Yet, were two of only 4 Chinese children to attend school in Victoria.
You were 12 when you found your homies, but you didn't know this at first. You were starting grade 7 at a new elementary school in that part of East Van, where all the street names are Scottish, like yours, Dumfries and Fleming and Killarney. Years later, you learned that Killarney was in fact Irish. And your new school was named after some inventor of worldwide standard time. He could have been your ancestor, if your ancestors weren't instead boxcar hobos who fled the prairies during the Depression to sleep out on these West Coast streets. The year before, your mother, a corporate secretary at an insurance agency, got sick of your father and shacked up with her boss. She gave your father the heave, and you moved out along with his few chattels to your grandfather's house to be solid with your menkin, and because you couldn't stand your mother's boss boo. At your old school, you would have been respected as one of the elder peckers, but here you had built up no goodwill, hadn't yet hit puberty, and your face was as pale as milk, splattered with punch-me freckles. You soon attracted the bullies. They stole your turkey sandwiches during the lunch recess. On a rainy day, when you sought shelter under the covered hopscotch walk, they chased you out because they used the walks for their ball hockey games. Then they took your nylon poncho for their goalie to wear, inverted like a straitjacket to trap the tennis ball puck. You were left in the rain-drenched playground among 2nd and 3rd graders who were digging trenches into the muddy ground, around the wooden seesaws and rusted tire swings. You went to another side of the school to find a dry awning, and that's where you found them, huddled and looking as cold as you out in the rain, though they were wearing sweaters and nylon jackets. They spoke a strange language. The youngest was your age, but most were older. One had a mustache. Some were smoking. Others sucked juice boxes. Some pointed fingers at you, and you didn't know whether they were talking to you or to each other.
It was one noon hour in the school library, where I usually hid during my lunch breaks, that I discovered L.M. Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables. The library's books, I remember, were alphabetized by title, so Anne was probably one of the first 3 or 4 books in the fiction section. I connected instantly with the cover art for Anne. It was the famous 1942 edition with the young protagonist propped atop a heap of wood, enclosed in oblong iris, which was in turn enclosed by rows of green and white abstractions that ably and efficiently suggested gables. I was drawn to Anne's plaintive looks, all old soul, melancholy eyes, her aching solitariness. underpinned by a bursting, indescribable sweetness, moved me, I remember, utterly. That I was a boy reading a book for girls was not something that overly concerned me, at least not enough to dissuade me from borrowing it. I probably did have a vague notion linking the liking of girls' things with that vile way in which I was accused of playing, meaning, the bully who asked me, he asked me, do you play the gay way? That was the way he phrased it, so that was how I was outed. So that's what I meant by that. I remember being careful to read Anne only at home, and to never be seen reading or carrying it in school. But I also had enough chutzpah to be true to myself. I had no interest in G.I. Joe, or even boy-focused classic literature like Huckleberry Finn. Anne saved my life, and that was that.
When I was in my 40s, a Mennonite writer gave me a lift home from a meeting. As we were driving down the darkened elm-lined trees of my neighborhood, we spoke about writing. At one point I said something like, I write to find my cultural identity. When those words came out of my mouth, it was like blurting out a truth that had remained a mystery to me all the years I had been a writer. The effect of it on my psyche was strange. I felt intense relief, but also disappointment. It was like I had inflated a balloon only to have found while tying it up that I'd let go of the whole damn thing. Release. If I were a more enlightened being, I would have been freed by my words. The self-absorbed work of finding out who I was, for that ultimately is what a search for identity entails, could suddenly be terminated by the naming of the quest. Except the quest wasn't over yet. Things were happening within my family that revealed ever stranger and unhappier truths about the consequences the war had on us. There was damage and loss, which would percolate through generations to me. The people who formed me came from a rich culture of complexity and beauty, as does everyone, because culture is being enacted everywhere through rituals, traditions, performances, events, and especially in writing. Writing was a thing I loved to do, and which I was also trained to do. The trained part of me, after years of practice, saw writing in compartmentalized categories. You wrote poetry or prose. You wrote essays or scripts. Whatever came out in words had to submit to form. This rule was a necessary discipline in my development as a writer. But often in art, the form of something arises organically out of its creation. The writer is a lump of clay, waiting to find form at the beginning of their life in language.
This is from Beholden. Words pile up like a log jam, damn debris, rip-rap, trouble brewing like a slow-moving train wreck. Signaling maps are not enough, unless they are put to the purpose of making a home for elk, caribou, bears, beavers. Imagine salmon when she swam here for thousands of years, before the long, loud, loaded train rumbling through the night, carrying its deadly freight on schedule for the demon of speed, chugging track by track, endless till it's not. Body listens lying on the ground, skull, ear, shoulder, rib, hip, thigh, calf, ankle, foot, toe, everything supported by earth, as dream engulfs the dreamer. Return to the story that is going on with or without you, through intervals of destruction for temporary power or storage that costs more than money can buy. The trees need the river, and the river needs the trees, and we need both river and trees, in ways that are buried in bone and sinew, uncanny returns, shifting baseline syndrome, no excuse for not learning the cultures of this land. Better late than never to not take abundance, generosity, or humility for granted on this spinning earth. Keep the language and the story honest. Don't call a reservoir a lake. Don't naturalize the hubris. Don't hide the arrogance of destroying what you don't understand. Listen for what's underneath the narrative of convenience, the inadequacy of speed and progress, or its deadly outcome, from the perspective of trees and herons and wolves who remember the before, the during, and the after, as we wait for the leap to take hold or the machinery of greed to dig a mass grave for those who refused to learn, to respect the land, the river, and those who are unwilling or unable to stop them.